So how long have you been teaching?
This is my 19th year of teaching.
19 years.
19th year, yeah. I had you, and I'm still here, so it's
yes.
good.
And all in Redline?
All in Redline.
All in Redline.
Yep.
And have you taught other age groups? Just 7th, 8th grade?
I substituted for a year in New York City.
Okay.
And I had all sorts of age groups there, but typically middle school and high school there. And I just like middle school age.
Awesome.
It's my type of sense of humor.
Cool. So, so the first question is, why did you become a teacher?
When I was in elementary school, no, that's a fib. When I was in high school, I had some friends that were taking a math class, and they didn't know how to do stuff. And things came pretty easily to me, and I found that I could show my friends how to do things and have some success. And that moment when like that light flash, when they get that click, and they finally figured out, like, yo, we've been hearing the teacher tell us about this for 2 weeks, and you told us for about 5 minutes, and we figured it out. That kind of really clicked, and that's kind of what led me into teaching. It's just
awesome.
that moment of like, wow, there it is, and going from that. And I still dig that. That's still a pretty cool feeling when kids see that. You get that look in their eye, and they're like, oh man, I finally get it. So it's
about that growth.
Oh yeah,
no
doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And that's like that's forever.
Oh yeah,
that's simply forever.
Oh yeah.
I know when you taught me, I noticed the little things that go a long way. Especially when we talk about character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you build that rapport with the students and stuff like that. That's one of the things that why I wanted to become an educator, just to set an example, be a role model for students. I think that's just like an inspiring thing, especially for me. So let's dig into that. I know he said Pedro said in his interview that he wanted it to be harder to become a teacher.
Oh yeah.
And the standards for Pennsylvania right now are a bachelor's degree and I believe a certificate. Going to a school that has to get a teaching program, their teaching program.
Yep.
Do you think that's a high enough standard and qualifications to become a teacher?
It's not bad. It's a good starting place. I mean, you'd be surprised when I went to college, some of the people that claim they want to be education majors and they can't handle basic skills. I'm not sure how, if they can't handle themselves, how are they going to teach them to other people? Yeah. So a lot of people get weeded out that way. And education's a calling. I mean, they put you through a lot of hoops. I mean, it sounds like you just need a bachelor's degree. You have to student teach, and you have to maintain a certain number of credits throughout the years to maintain your certificate. But it's hard. It's a lot of hoops to jump through, and unless you really want to do it, why would you do it in the first place? So, I mean, I can see things being tougher, but at the same time, education right now is one of the fields where we're really in short supply of teachers.
Gotcha.
And so I think making those things tougher right now would be very difficult because you're going to just make things that much more difficult in terms of feeding the force or feeding the workforce of education. I would love to see some stricter standards because there's some people that you just sit there and say, I want my child to have that person as a teacher, and exactly. I'm not sure that would be they wouldn't be my number one choice. Let's put it that way. So let's go that way.
Is the evaluation process through testing standards as far as your class and judging and just evaluating yourself, or is that just say an evaluator coming in here and saying, okay, he is meeting standards, credentials to teach students at this grade?
We do both here. We have obviously our evaluation processes. We have a few different choices. You can either be formally assessed, where an administrator comes in twice a year if you're tenured, and they watch your classroom the first time they announce it, the second time it's unannounced. Okay. Or you have other options where you have a peer evaluation where every 2 out of every 3 years you and a partner can work up and you do the observations with someone else. Okay. Or the other one is a self-directed where you're putting basically together a portfolio of what you do in terms of as you're in the education process for your students, and you're sharing that with the administrators. There's a lot of documentation that obviously comes along with that. And then on top of that, we do get evaluated based on our students' test scores, which I can't say I'm a huge fan of that aspect of it, but you control what you can control, and you try to have kids not worry about the test, and you prepare them as best you can, and you tell them, hey, my big thing has always been, if you can walk in here at the end of the day and look me in the eye and say you did the best you could, that's all I can ask of you, because there's going to be stuff on there that we've taught you that you don't remember, or there's going to be things on there that are worded oddly that because the funny thing about these tests are they're made by people that aren't in education, so they try to make the test harder by making the tests a little more convoluted than they necessarily have to be. Let's put it that way. So
is that the state's decision to do that, or is that?
Well, the state goes through. You know, they have testing services. They pay money, pay good money to get these tests for, and so they want things to be difficult, and that's, you know, we're always raising the standards, brother, and that's, you know, I understand that, but at the same time, there's raising the standards and there's trying to trick kids, and a lot of times we think we're trying to trick kids with some of the questions they're asking.
Oh wow,
let's put it that way.
So speaking of the students in here, how do you engage with your students in different you know, with, you know, as far as different cultures? How do you get the curiosity out of them, unlocking that curiosity and like unlocking their full potential?
Big thing for me is being approachable and understanding that I'm a person too, and I make mistakes, and I like to joke around, I like to goof around, and try to show them how things apply to their lives and how they're going to use those in the real world. Big thing for me is I'm a firm believer in the education process. A kid is not going to want to learn from you until they know they can trust you and that you care for them. Yeah. And that's a big thing. And that's going to, you know, we've kind of gone away from that in the education field where it's a lot more numbers here and we look at a lot of statistics. But I'm still a firm believer, unless a kid thinks that, you know, you love them, you know, and you care for them, they're not going to really care what you have to say in terms of the math part of it. So a big thing for me, you know, the first week and a half, we do a lot of rapport building, and we go from there. And then you try to do fun things that'll keep them engaged. You know, right now the big thing is cell phones and different things. So we try to do things to engage them through that. You know, instead of me giving them a definition, hey, look it up on your phone, try to put it in your own words. So we're always trying to, you know, make those connections and build off of those. You know, kids. You know, I lunch with the kids. There's a lot of different things I do to try to build things up with them and keep them interested in what's going on.
I know we chatted before we started recording here. Not be able to connect with the student. I mean, as best you can.
Yeah.
Do we have resources at the school that can assist in bringing them in?
We have. Our big thing right now is we read a book last year called Lost at School, where we're trying to engage those children that are having a hard time with school, and we're trying to learn some strategies through that. The guidance office obviously offers, you know, groups that meet and help with that, and there's always people that are looking out. And when we got away from teaming this year, we had teamed for the last 10 years or so. You know, the nice thing with our team was we felt as long as one person from the team, we'd like go through our roster of all our kids and say, you know, we made a goal that at least every kid on the team had a connection with one teacher on the team at least, you know, and that's tough to do. So you just try to find those connections. You know, you try to find things kids like and what they're interested in, and try to apply it to them, or you know, maybe throw those things into a word problem or bring them up in conversation that kind of catches people's eyes and goes from there. So
nice.
Again, we're always trying to find ways to make those connections.
That's good. You know, for me as a parent, and you're as parents as well, have you? Your son's in first grade, correct?
First grade, yes.
And my son's in kindergarten. And what I've seen in the lower levels is that parent connection.
Oh yeah.
That parent, that teacher connection.
Oh yeah.
How have you built relationship with parents at this level?
With parents, with this level, it's a lot of communication through email. You know, I put out a lot of group things. I'm very big on social media. It's the most boring social media feed of all time in terms of I always post what's on the board. You know, occasionally something that's going on in class or with my family. But you know, you're always trying to make those connections. And I'm one who a lot of teachers don't live where they teach, or they don't shop where they teach. I live dead in the heart of my community, and you know, I walk around town and I go to the same grocery stores everybody else does. So I'm one of those people that if I see people out and about, I'm not shy to walk up and just, you know, pat them on the back and say, hey, I really enjoy having your kid in class, and we try to talk about where things are going from there. So
do we need more of that in the educational field as a whole? To have like a community, like you said, a community man that, and you know, embellishes and wants the caring factor and learning, educating students as well, but just involved in the community.
I think it's a great thing. You know, in Redline, we were lucky enough for years to have a guy by the name of Paul Kuhn, who used to be a basketball coach around here. And Paul was a social studies teacher at the high school, and he also was in charge of like making connections with kids. So he would only teach half a day, and he would go to elementary buildings and he'd go read stories with kids, At the holidays, he was gathering meals,
wow.
hams and stuff at Easter and turkeys at Thanksgiving, and delivering food constantly, taking kids out for hikes, and he was always making those connections. In that position, once he retired, went over to another individual, and she is subsequently retired. And I'm not sure anybody's kind of picked up the slack. But I will say that since then, we do have a full-time social worker in the district who is working her heart out to make connections. We're doing things like we put out, donation boxes. We're constantly being hit up for money about helping people out here and there. So it's a lot. The personal part might have gone away a little bit, but we do have things we are doing for our community members.
Oh,
but again, you talk to some teachers and they can't imagine living where they teach, and I couldn't think of it any other way. That's this is where my kids are going to go. I want to make this the best place it could possibly be.
Awesome.
So,
with that said, the school in general, what is the school culture? I know, looking at statistic-wise, the minority itself is only 12%. I mean, as far as other races like black and Hispanics, and the white is dominant.
Oh yeah.
How do we associate different cultures like myself as Hispanic into curriculum nowadays? I don't know how difficult it is for math.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're probably talking to the wrong guy in that respect, because hey, let's throw this in a word problem. Yeah. It's hard to say, but I can't really answer that question because again, I can answer it from my part in terms of you do the best you can in terms of bringing people's different ideas and different backgrounds together to see how things go. Whereas the social studies department, I would think, has more of a chance, and the English department has more of a chance to talk about different cultures and different aspects, because that's part of what they do. Whereas with us, you have that fine line of, you're not fine line because it is what it is. You're just trying to get across your material, but at the same time, you talk to kids about what they do at home and what a normal day is at home. But that's, again, not usually in the classroom so much as sitting down at lunch when you're talking to a kid, or in the hallway, or during those downtimes, talking about what cultures are, or not what cultures are, but what do what do the holidays look like at your house? What is, what's a normal night, and that's, what's the family situation for you? That's how it is with everything. And here we are a very white-heavy population, and those numbers are changing. And Red Lions have always been a very, very white town, and the numbers are slowly creeping up in terms of minorities, and some people are having a hard time with that, not obviously in the building, but some people in town are very thrown off by how things are going. Red Lion's a weird place. We're above the Mason-Dixon line, but you see a lot of Confederate flags floating around still, and that's something, whereas me coming from where I come from, in Trenton, New Jersey, growing up in a city and coming here, it's weird. Like, I never saw a Confederate flag unless we're talking about the Dukes of Hazzard, for goodness sakes. And then now we have people blatantly flying them in the front yards. It's a weird scene. It's definitely a weird scene.
Do you think we have a responsibility as an educator to, I'd say the best way to do it is teach in a way of saying that prejudice is bad and discrimination is bad, to a point where they're able to associate that with the future, like in college or out in the workforce?
It's usually not the kids that are the problem. It's the ingrained attitudes of the adults in the community, which obviously that starts with being kids. And Red Line, it used to be tough. When you went through, minorities in our building were very, very few and far between. And now it's not unusual to have 3 or 4 people with different backgrounds in your classroom. So it's easier to have those conversations because there's people there. There's people that you went to school with that probably had different opinions about people of Latin descent.
Yeah, exactly.
But they know you, and they wouldn't have that attitude because they know you. It's easier to have those conversations when there's more of a mix of people in your classroom, because then you can see that not everybody's not to get into the stereotyping.
Of course.
You know what I mean? You're not going to get into those. Well, all black people do this. All Latin people do this. Because there's people you can actually see and you can learn from, and you learn different things from. It's pretty wild. So I think it's easier now than it used to be, because when somebody, and you don't hear those things as much as you used to about all black people do this. Well, you can have a conversation about how things go now. So it's definitely different. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's I think,
and it's become easier. Like I
yeah,
said,
that's what I think. It's just an easier thing, and
Yeah.
I think it needs to be more predominant in,
without a
in
doubt.
discussions
Without a
with
doubt.
just normal people like you and I, or
yeah.
with the students here. I think it needs to be brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Just circling back into students.
Yeah.
Now, I know you said earlier that you had an all-male dominant
Without
class.
doubt. Yeah.
With only 4 females
Yep.
in there, but I know in the interview that I was watching, they said globally it's a problem that males are underperforming than females, and then more females are in college than males. Do you see that in the classroom as far as your classes with males and females?
I've been lucky over the years in terms of underachieving students. I usually get the most out of kids, and again, I think it's because of that rapport that's been built. I will say, if I had to think of my 3 toughest learners this year, they all happen to be male. They all have some other things going on as well, though. They all have a label of some sort or another, whether it's an IEP or a 504. They have some other things going on with them. But it is what it is. The last few years, at least in Redline, at least for myself, my numbers have been so skewed high, male to female, that I thought like I was like the good role model guy for a while. So I actually went down to the guidance office and said, hey, I appreciate you guys think I'm good with young men that are having some trouble with their backgrounds, but let's balance things out a little bit. Let's help things out a little bit. But they're like, no, that's just kind of how it is.
Oh, wow.
So I teach all middle level classes or lower level classes, and there are 2 teachers that do all the higher level classes. Okay. And those numbers tend to answer, here's where I'm going with this answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
They tend to say their female numbers are higher than their male numbers, and they teach the higher level classes. So, I mean, to answer your question, it looks like that might be the case because, again, our higher level classes are having more females than males, whereas our lower level classes are having more males than females.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now,
I know it took a long way to get there, but I got there eventually. It's all right.
As a school in general, do we have the support and the environment to have you succeed in the position you are today?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
I definitely think so, because when everything's said and done, when things get too regulated by administration, it gets tough because it's not you anymore. The administration we currently have, and I've been blessed to have for most of my career, when everything's said and done, we have to do stuff outside of class and get ready. But once that door shuts, they kind of let me do what I do, which is nice. And I think I've had success over the years. Again, and I attribute it all to making those connections. Where I still have students that come out and ask me for favors, or I have students that are at the high school that I'll get random emails from saying, hey, can you help me out with my homework? And it's pretty wild, and it's pretty cool, and they want to tell you when good things are going on in their lives, and that just tells you. Those kind of connections you make. Whereas there are other teachers that, you ask them about a kid they had last week, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, wow. And that's just, I think I'm lucky. I got a good memory for faces and names.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And go that way, so it's all right.
I don't know how many, 16 years?
It's been a while.
Yeah,
it's probably 16 years, probably about right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No doubt.
And besides this school, Jake, what are your opinions on York in general? Do you think that schools like Central and Dover, and let's really in the inner city in York City, have that same support you have? Do you believe that's the case?
It helps to have financial support. I will say that. Redline for years talked about how they don't have, we give a top-notch education for the very little amount of money we have. We're a district that doesn't have a very big tax base in terms of businesses, so we do the best we can. Whereas places like York City, they're laying off teachers and their class sizes are getting bigger, and you would think they have more of a tax base. But again, those incentives for doing well on state testing, they don't reach, I can't say as to one way or another, but again, I don't think those tests are necessarily designed for everyone. I think they're kind of leaning towards your higher end kids. And so it's hard to have those situations. My biggest class this year is 25. When I was in the city, you'd have classes over 30, and it's tough. So the city has had a really tough time in recent years in terms of holding on to staff, because another problem is if you have somebody who's good there, they get pilfered by somebody else once they reach tenure. Somebody else is going to bring them in because they're experienced and they have and they do well from there. So it's hard to be a teacher in a place like that in a city like that, in a situation where you don't really necessarily have support from your administration, and you know your class sizes are huge, you see it's, you know, the grass is greener on the other side, and in a lot of ways it is. So, you know, it's just a wild animal. It's just, and you know, there's other districts where, you know, you look at a York suburban where the parents, there's money there, and money helps. You know, the parents come in with money. Education is important, and that's a big part of it too. So it has to be that community aspect. You know, when we had the shooting here, we put up, you know, our monument, and it was the community, the staff, and it was the students, and that triumvirate has to be there. Yeah, and if any one piece is missing, it makes educating a really difficult process.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a place like Suburban or a place like Dallastown, they have a lot of support from home about education, and you say, hey, here's what's going on, and things change, whereas in other places that's not necessarily the case. So
is it with that being said, is pressure on those schools to hit those standards to get that financial need?
Well, there's always pressure to reach those needs. You know, we have a meeting at the, you know, as soon as the scores come out, we have a meeting about where we're at with our scores. You know, the nice thing that Pennsylvania does is it's not necessarily, you get a score based on how many kids pass the test.
Yeah.
Part of your score is also based on has a child made growth from the year before, and that's a big part. You know, before it was, if you're a lower level teacher, if you had all lower classes, you were dreading the day those scores were coming out because you knew your kids weren't going to be doing very well based on past performance. You know, you can push as hard as you can, and they might have gone from a below basic to a basic, but they're still basic. In the world of everything said and done, they're still not up to where they need to be, but they could have made progress. And now that we're measuring, you know, with this growth model, you can see if a child's made growth over the year, and you can see the teachers and the schools that are making growth with kids from year to year, which is pretty cool. It's a different way of looking at it, and I appreciate it because the pressure is not there to get everyone to proficient, but you're trying to get everybody to at least make progress.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a big part of what it is. Yeah, everybody starts in different places. It's where you get to.
Yeah.
So
all right. We're going to end it with just a word of advice for not only myself, but for some of the students out there who are aspiring to be a teacher. Do you have any things that we should be doing, or as far as like advice for just us in college now, doing these classes, and for the future as becoming teachers?
Education's a calling. When everything's said and done, you know, if you look at education as a job, you're going to have a very long, miserable career. But you have to understand that you never stop being somebody's teacher. And I say that to my kids all the time. You're always going to be my kids. And they kind of like, oh, that's so creepy. But they are. You know, I look at you and I see, you know, 13-year-old Noel, you know, goofing around playing basketball with him and joking around with him in class. And you're always going to be, that connection's always going to be there. And you have to hold yourself to a higher standard because you're always being looked at in that position. And so you really have to live the life. It's what it comes down to. And if that's something you're not willing to do, education's probably not the thing for you. And I love my job every day. And I was telling Noel at the beginning of this year, it's been a struggle this year. It's been a challenge. But you got to look at it as it's a challenge. It's not the kids. You just got to find the right way to make connections with kids. There's always a way. And again, it comes down to, I've said it 13 times during this interview, you got to make connections with kids. Yeah. If they don't know that you care for them and you're interested in them, they're not going to do stuff for you, and it's just a losing battle. You got to lay the groundwork. So,
yeah, I saw a post before I came here. I believe the student's name is Marshall, and he said something about bringing the magic to class. That going outside the box, learn about cultures, and then just to find engagement towards the students is huge. It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. And I love the post, by the way. I know you're going to watch this, but I think you bring the magic to your classes. I mean, look, I was comfortable to come out here, email you, and do the interview with you. And I mean, we sporadically haven't seen each other for almost 16 years. I mean, this is the connections are definitely long term. It's real. It definitely is, and that's something I would take as an educator for the future. Thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate it, Mr. Dansberry.
It's my pleasure, Noel. Always good to see you.